Looks like some folks continue to file in, and I'll give it about 30 more seconds, and we'll get our meeting kicked off here. Well, thanks again for everybody's attendance and participation in our housing committee. This is a big meeting for us. It's an endeavor that we needed to work our way through, and we're closing in on the end. This may not be our exact last meeting, but it could be. We'll see how things travel through the conversation today. And in about an hour and a half, I think we can make that decision and feel good where we go next and what our recommendations are. So we've had some great input from all of you in between meetings, and I appreciate that. You taking time to prepare responses and emails and conversations with Wayne and myself. And we, again, very much appreciate your input and your interest in this topic. It's one that has hung over our heads, if you will, for a number of years since I've been active and an elected official, in our town. And I think the other elected officials on the phone could probably say the same thing. So anyway, we'll see where we head here. And I don't want to take any more time than we need to, because we've got some real meat in this meeting that we really need to dissect and respond to and end up with some recommendations. So I'm going to turn it over to our Deputy Town Manager, Wayne Herron. So Wayne, we'll let you take us through a couple items here, and very participatory setting here. So if folks have questions or need to clarify anything as we go through this, we will take you to a point where we're really going to need your input. So speak up and let us know what's on your mind and what you think. So Wayne, turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Mayor. As I normally do, I always try right at this point to give a little status of where we are and where we're going. As the mayor mentioned, we'll go through a draft set of recommendations today. If we agree and if we feel like we've addressed our mission, then I've had the question from several of you, where do we go from here? How do we stay involved? And I don't want to usurp the mayor's intent, but I think he's talked about the possibility that if the town board chooses to continue with an affordable housing effort, that this group might stay engaged on an implementation type basis and possibly act as a steering committee if we move into the development of a full-fledged housing plan. So while this effort we promised you would be 6 meetings or less, we've tried to keep to that. But certainly I hope that some of you will want to stay engaged as we moved into hopefully the development of a full-fledged housing plan. And we'll talk to you more about that as we move along. I've also had questions as to once we send these recommendations up in some form or fashion, how can I as a committee member support and let the town board know how I feel? A couple of options on that. We will, of course, let you know when we send these to the town board. We'll probably do it first through an email, and you'll have the ability to respond and let town board members know at that point. But also, the town manager announced last night that we're going to do something a little different in the budget process. We're actually going to hold a public hearing up front to gain citizen input, and that's going to be on January 19th. So on January 19th, you certainly are welcome, and you have the ability to speak at the first #1 budget public hearing in January. Seems so early since we adopt the budget in June, but it takes that long to prepare a budget for a town that has as much going on as Cornelius. So I think it'll be critical that town board members hear from you as to interest in how we implement whatever recommendations might come out of today. So certainly those are a couple opportunities you'll have, and we can certainly keep you informed of other opportunities that you might engage with your town board and let them know how you feel about housing. And that kind of leads us into item number 2 on our agenda. I've had this question all through this process. What actually are we calling ourselves? And as we talked with the mayor and we started this, we decided to use a generic term as a housing study committee because we didn't want to pigeonhole it. We didn't want to make people uncomfortable with any specific term. But as many of you have said, we have alternately used throughout this committee the term affordable housing. We've used the term workforce housing. And there's other terms out there. So, Mayor, we wanted to give the committee just a few minutes to express opinions on should we stick with the generic name housing, or are there some benefits, or should we be upfront about, hey, we're talking about affordable housing, or we're specifically addressing workforce, and just wanted to let the committee express opinions and let people talk about how they feel about the name. So I'll stop there and just open up the discussion on the name.
Hey,
Yeah,
Wayne.
love to hear from you. Thanks. Go ahead.
Hey, this is Sean. You guys hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, awesome. Didn't know which mic was actually working. So my thought was in this, we are talking about affordable housing. Yes, we're talking about workforce, but to me, that's community. So, and I my whole heart is in Cornelius. And the one thing I do every day is work in the community and try to serve community. So to me, when I was thinking about this, one thing came to me is community housing. That was my suggestion.
Okay.
Good idea. Others, please.
This is Dr. Mike.
Yeah, Mike, go ahead.
I like the generic term housing committee. Certainly affordable workforce are important, but we saw that study of the housing inventory that was done by the EDC, and there's big swaths of need of many categories in Cornelius that I think we need to address. Certainly millennials do not find it comfortable moving back because they can't afford things here. I don't know if that counts as affordable housing or not. But I think we need to, I like the idea of us looking at the housing inventory and addressing needs across the board, but also affordable and workforce are important.
I think we need to be transparent in whatever we do.
I like both the generic and the word community. And I do agree that we need to be transparent. I think if we label it something specific, then we're limiting ourselves to that specific maybe need. And we may want to venture out into something bigger once something else is addressed. I also think the word affordable, people tend to assume that that's a label towards, some sort of negativity in their backyard, even though affordable could just mean something that you and I can just live in, right? So I think we need to definitely stay away from that term just because people view it as something negative at times.
That's good input. Thank you.
I'd love to just second what Sean and Janice said. I work at Habitat and I do policy. So I'm always talking about affordable housing. And Sean, I've never considered the concept and the name of community housing. And that's really what we're getting after here, that it's a place for everyone. And the reality is in a hot housing market like we have here in Mecklenburg County and in Cornelius, everyone can always be outpriced. So what is that idea of a community? And I believe I'm the only millennial here, so I'll carry that flag too. Yes, we want to move home to our hometown, these great communities that raised us, but can we afford to live there? And I think a lot of times working professional millennials do kind of get left out. And when we're the idea of a millennial who's got a college degree in the affordable housing arena, that muddies it up a little bit. So Janice, I loved your points, and Sean, thank you. If you're okay, I think I'd love to plagiarize that idea of community housing moving forward. So thank you for that. What a great way to start the new year for me. Thanks.
I like, this is George Searle. I like the community housing terminology. And it really feels good. I think it's everything that we just said. It's very open to everyone. However, if someone asked me what is community housing, I would have to go to affordable housing. That is our issue. 80% of our people that live in Cornelius cannot afford to live here. And that is why we're all together, is to fix that. And the best way to fix that is to make that plain and clear. Maybe it's not a terminology that will last forever. And this group was tasked to make sure that we bring transparency to our community, that we have an affordable housing problem, and that we need to fix it. And for that reason, I think the community housing terminology is perfect. It feels good. It really makes sense. But if we're going to fix something, we have to go and be surgical around that. And affordable housing does not exist in Cornelius. And that's why I think affordable housing is what our task is.
So this is Joe Roy. What about adding a tag to it? Community housing, fostering affordability, or I like community housing too, and I understand what George is talking about. We certainly need to stay focused on the affordability. We use tags with our naming of our communities at times, and it seems to be, a successful way to look at a name.
So this is Janice. I like your tag idea just because it does foster transparency with the affordability at the end. And it does, from my experience, ring a little bit of a different tone versus saying affordable housing. It's community housing with affordability. You're bringing a different viewpoint, even though it's the same term, it's just said in a different way. And it does make a difference for when people are looking at it, especially those that don't want affordable housing in their backyard.
This is Michelle. I would agree with Janice and Joe and George. And I think Joe came up with a great solution with that, because I think we do have to we have to show people that we're putting an emphasis on looking at that circle. If we could come up with a diagram of the different types of housing, and we want a well-balanced community. So this is a weak area, and we're taking a look at that. So I think what Joe brought up is a great solution.
Yeah, let me add one thing. I like that as well, but I do worry a little bit about the connotation. I think we're talking about housing for our workforce, and people that work here, as George or someone said, 80-85% of the folks that work in Cornelius can't afford to live here and don't live here. So are we talking about a broad range of housing opportunities for those that work here, or not? The word workforce, I guess it has a little better ring to me than affordable, but maybe I'm being a little bit closed-minded there. So I can stand corrected for sure. So what is there let me ask Wayne, is there a synonymous definition for each that's different, or is it all kind of the same bucket, Wayne?
It really is all kind of the same bucket, but what we can do is based on the comments so far and any others that we might receive here in the next few minutes, maybe I can work with Roger. And one of the things that a lot of you have talked about is, what do other people in the country do, and what do other plans do? And we can kind of scour these others to look at their titles and how they've addressed the same issue, and see if they've used tags like what you're talking about, and try to coalesce that and put something together and shoot that back out to you and see if we can get a consensus. But yeah, I like the community housing with the tag, but what does the tag actually say? What kind of word goes there, and what's a good word to put there to reflect what we're all talking about, and that's what we can search for. But I understand what the mayor's talking about as well. But yeah, we're certainly open to searching and scouring and seeing what we can find, and can put that back to the committee for input.
Hey, Wayne.
Yes.
Wayne, this is Dennis.
Yes, sir.
Hey, I appreciate the conversation and input. All along, I really was pushing for us to move from a study to action. So I appreciate where we're at. I'm not hung up on the name, excuse me, the name as much as moving forward with something that's transparent and realistic. I think if we have such an overarching objective that we can't get anywhere, that we continue to study, if you will, we won't have a meaningful project. So I appreciate the comments, and I'm looking forward to action, something that's meaningful. And I think it's probably starting along the lines that we've talked about with workforce housing and some of the Smithville community efforts that have already begun.
Hey, Wayne, what if we did something like Cornelius Housing Coalition? Because coalition basically means you're bringing people together and to create action, essentially, and then put community into like the tagline, bringing community together. Because one thing I want to kind of emphasize, I guess, is we're trying to create an inclusive community, not necessarily just for the workforce or just for affordability or just for affluent people. We're creating an all-inclusive community where everyone feels a sense of community. So, just kind of throwing that out there as well.
And that's a very good point. And when you look in the recommendations, we actually use the word workforce and affordable interchangeably in many of the recommendations. So that could be a very good strategic title.
Yeah, I like Susan's idea and the word inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
You have to remember that our mission statement for the town is that welcome the community for all.
That's right.
I think that would be a great tagline right there. Cornelius Housing Coalition, inclusive community for all.
Or however it's worded in the.
Yeah, however, yeah.
Okay.
I kind of like Community Housing and Beautification Committee because right now we're stuck on affordable. We can't have affordable housing in Cornelius until we find the land, the resources to do that. Mm-hmm. But we can take Smithville and in our budgeting for this committee, add sidewalks, add lights, add trees. So we're also looking at the community, but we're also beautification of the committee. Of the town. So I like Community Housing and Beautification Committee.
Oh, I come up with the term, Cornelius Housing Opportunities, and that we have a vision statement that emphasizes the need for it to be either affordable or for workforce.
Thank you, Ron. It's all good stuff.
Yeah, certainly, Mayor. I think with those comments, we can put together maybe one or two draft titles. That's a lot of good information, a lot of good stuff there. And we can certainly shoot that back to the committee and maybe try to get a consensus on one or the other. And but yeah, that's excellent. I appreciate that very much.
That consensus term again.
There we go again, right?
Well, okay. Mayor, if that's good on that topic, I will be happy to move right into the draft recommendations.
Yeah, I think that's a good direction to go. Thank you, Wayne.
Okay. I appreciate all the comments that I've received since, and one, I'll apologize that it took till yesterday, but we wanted to make sure we had it as in a good a form as possible before we sent it out to you. So we sent out a draft list of recommendations yesterday. And while I've received a lot of positive comment, I've told a lot of you, I want to turn that right back to the committee, because what this draft set of recommendations basically is is a compilation of everything that I have heard from committee members and discussed with committee members over the last 4 to 5 meetings. So I'm going to just start right at the top, and then as I go down the list, provide a little bit of editorial based on the input and the questions that we've received so far. But starting, and I didn't number these, but the Mayor's Housing Committee recommendations, the first underlying topic, and I tried to start bold and come down, but the first is about the main issue that we've started this whole conversation over, is the comprehensive housing plan. Currently, the town does not have a comprehensive housing plan. We've asked this question and put it on your agenda at each meeting. And what I've consistently heard back is the recommendation, yes, the town should prioritize and budget for the preparation of a comprehensive housing plan. One of the things that caught on to a lot of the committee members was something that our consultant, Roger Walden, offered at one of our previous meetings, is that this could really be done in 2 stages. There could be a phase 1, which could be a very concise 3-month effort to identify the short and midterm goals and objectives that can be addressed in the near term. I think this is an important step, because as you go down our recommendations today, we certainly have some short-term recommendations, but there could be a lot of others. And I think Roger, as a consultant, has a much more of an ability to tap into things that people have done around the country, and might be able to bring other short-term and midterm things to us through this little 3-month effort. And then phase 2, if you would like to recommend it this way, we could move into the more comprehensive long-term evaluation. Now, one of the things, and I sent in a response back to Pastor Marlowe this morning. He posed a very good question yesterday, and I indicated I wanted to talk about it with the whole committee as well, is one of the things that you don't see in the recommendations that I've sent out is a specific reference to the Smithville plan, which we had a case study in our second meeting about the Smithville plan specifically. My response and what I would advise the committee is that the goal from a staff standpoint and a planning standpoint of a comprehensive housing plan is that you evaluate the entire town. And each neighborhood deserves its own byline and its own recommendation. And so that's one reason we didn't call out Smithville specifically. And in my response to Pastor Marlowe, I used several neighborhoods that we think should be evaluated in the comprehensive plan. And I'll start kind of with Smithville, since we talked about that. Certainly Smithville has started an effort, and it's a wonderful effort. They have a great consultant. I think we were all impressed what we saw in our presentation. And I think every recommendation that we have here applies to the Smithville plan, as far as the town working with their consultant, the town working with the neighborhood, the town looking to adjust land use to assist the neighborhood, the town looking to use CDBG dollars to look at infrastructure that will promote the plan, looking at things that we can do for housing assistance, whether it be rental or down payment assistance. All those things can go into that Smithville plan and be a part of it. But there's also other neighborhoods. Julie represents the Meridian neighborhood. I think the Meridian neighborhood needs their own attention, and will get their own byline in the plan. But we'll do Meridian much different than Smithville. Smithville has a high rate of owner occupied for a neighborhood of its type. So you deal with consensus building differently, and you talk to people differently. In Meridian, where you have a higher percentage of rental properties, you have a different kind of stakeholder committee. We have been requested to look at issues such as minimum housing to help renters work with landlords. How do we do enforcement in a cooperative way so that we're not looking like we're coming in with a hammer? How do we look to, as Todd mentioned earlier, how do we look to beautify the neighborhood? And how do we work on infrastructure issues, as well as looking at land use and zoning and density? But I also mentioned how and I'm going to talk about Catawba North, and that's where Todd is. We have a lot of people who say, boy, I would love to live in that neighborhood. Can the town look at affordable strategies? But as we look at consensus and we talk to Catawba North, what you're going to hear from Catawba North is, we like the way we're going right now. We don't need density decisions, and we don't need the town necessarily stepping in and helping us, because we're doing quite fine the way we are. We have increases in property values. We have new families moving in. We have people renovating homes. So Catawba North likes their direction without us coming in and trying to establish a different direction or telling them what to do. We also need to look at the Sefton area. That's an area on the west side, but it's ripe for development of workforce, affordable, senior, millennial, and the catalyst there is the CATS Park and Ride and transit that really provides for young people, older folks who are retiring, just a wide range of different types of rental housing that fills a gap that we don't have. So this first line of comprehensive housing plan, we anticipate that this plan will be all inclusive of all of our neighborhoods and look at all different types of housing at all levels, different age groups, the seniors, the millennials, the diversity. So this comprehensive housing plan is a very important recommendation that is all inclusive. So I'll stop there because I just threw out a lot of stuff, and just see any input that the committee might have on this initial recommendation, and any changes in wording or how you might feel about that.
Wayne.
Yes, sir.
So the Smithville plan was always kind of intended to be a model.
Yes, sir.
For other areas of the town,
and
realizing we might have to make modifications as you move into it. But seeing that so much work has already gone into the Smithville plan, and it does include multi-family housing, it includes seniors. It's to be a mixed income neighborhood.
Yes, sir.
And so, I guess you guys know that I'm pushing the Smithville plan.
Yes, sir. And I appreciate that. And just as I mentioned to Pastor Marlowe this morning, people perceive how we write these things differently. And I have received multiple questions about inclusion or reference to the Smithville plan. So I feel like we probably need to do something like that. And I like how you just mentioned that it was meant to be a model. I think it will be a model, and it certainly, your effort certainly is. So I think there's certainly some way we can include some language to reflect that and be cognizant and reflect what you've done so far, because it is a tremendous effort.
It absolutely is. And I think what we've got to identify is that each of the segments of town that you mentioned, i.e. Meridian and Catawba North and so on, Sefton, they're all different. And no two plans will be alike. They'll have some overlying similarities for sure. So, I do think there needs to be some reference, if you will, Wayne. I agree with Ron's point there, because they're head of a lot of neighborhoods around and about. So we need to make mention of that and give credit. And certainly that's part of what we point out if we should move ahead with a formalized, engaged plan.
Agreed.
Yeah, and I like the Smithville plan because it's inclusive of, some of the homes that are there and owned by the owners probably outright can remain. So it's a blending of the past and the future, and that's an identity that Cornelius has. It's really a crossroads between the past and the future. So I like that plan just to kind of exemplify all of that.
Exactly. And that does translate into our other neighborhoods as well. Like Catawba North, a lot of the original homes are, included there. Meridian, that's the roots of our town in many ways. So yeah, all good points. Thank you.
Yeah. And Wayne, one of the reasons I asked you that question, and I certainly agree that each part of the town has its own needs and particular perspectives and things that needs to be addressed. I was just wanting, Smithville to be specifically mentioned in this, partially because it's one of the only historic African-American communities, and it's one of the communities that's kind of threatened by gentrification. And in paying attention to some of the specifics about that community, we could be of help to other communities in our area of North Mecklenburg and elsewhere. So that was kind of one of the reasons that I was asking about specifics about the Smithville community.
Those are excellent points, and I appreciate that.
Other comments?
Hey, Wayne, one thing that I would just, as I was listening to you talk through how you plan to kind of lay it out and have each area have its own line, if you will, I think that that's definitely a really good point. One thing I would say, and I think that Ron made a really good point about creating a mixed community, a mixed use kind of with multi-level income levels and whatnot within those, because I think if we focus just on Meridian being more of a rental community and Smithville being more of an owner-occupied community, and Septon being focused more on the park and ride, we basically are kind of creating niches within those different communities, as this community is going to be for this community, or this area within the community is going to be based upon that. So just really trying to create more of a holistic, again, approach to our overall community versus, Meridian is mainly focused on rental, even though that might be the way that it is now, not necessarily being a proponent of that in the future, but creating more of a holistic community where, regardless of where you live within our community, you still have the opportunity to live here, live there, regardless of your income levels, regardless of anything else outside of that.
And totally agree with that. And I apologize, I didn't mean to represent that was our goal for the end product. What it means is we just have to treat the neighborhoods differently in how we prepare the plan, because we have different levels of participation based on who's there right now.
Right.
But we have a role.
Throw that out there.
Yeah. And so I certainly appreciate that. And in no way want to represent that we're trying to steer it in that direction. We want it to mature in the way that the town would like it to mature, mixed, or in whatever manner the neighborhood desires for it to be. And that's another thing that the town board has always been consistent about, is making sure that we listen, we try to achieve consensus, and we try to do not only what the neighborhood wants, but what the greater good for the town desires for that area as well.
Wayne, is you Sean?
Yes.
A quick question. So the article I passed over to you with the Charlotte Business Journal for the HFT about the second round of 50 million that they're looking for affordable housing. Is that going to be something that we're really going to go for for funding assistance?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. The reason why I asked that is in the article, they broke it way down. And I think we may not want to label these neighborhoods, but Charlotte's requirements of what their focus is for this money might, in a way, we have to look at in that way. Because, for example, they laid out that 60% of that money is going to go towards new construction rental houses. 30% is going to be reserved for natural occurring affordable homes, and 10% is going towards new for sale housing. And then they also said in the article that they are looking to raise the subsidy cap on homes, affordable homes that are close to work, services, and transportation. So it's kind of good at understanding where CATS is, where are the individuals working. It just so if we are looking for this funding from Charlotte, it might be having a good understanding of, you know, how we have to lay out these communities to be able to get to that funding.
And let me clarify one thing on that. And where I started was under the comprehensive housing, and hopefully y'all can see that on your screen. I forgot to share to start with. But let me jump down to the funding recommendation, and let me talk a little bit about how that works through the foundation. Identification of resources and opportunities. Currently, the town uses CDBG on a limited basis. You heard from the Central Iowa Council, and we also work through a HUD consortium here in the county to apply for CDBG and HUD grants. Those are usually one-time grants that you get that last for 2 or 3 years, and they're usually small in dollar, anywhere from $30,000 to $80,000. The big money is with the foundation, or the Charlotte Housing Trust. One thing about that is when we apply for, and they administer a lot of different programs, we are not eligible for Charlotte's money. Charlotte's money stays in Charlotte, but the same foundations administer Mecklenburg County money. Mecklenburg County money is probably equal in dollars. We're talking, right now there's about 61 million, I think, in the Housing Trust Fund that's administered by the Foundation for the Carolinas. A significant portion of that is budgeted by Mecklenburg County. A significant portion is raised through the private sector, whether it's Bank of America, Wells Fargo. So the parameters you're talking about in the city of Charlotte won't necessarily apply to the money that we're eligible for. So we work very closely with Mecklenburg County to talk about the parameters on the money that we are eligible for. And we also have had conversations with the Housing Trust Fund and Foundation for the Carolinas. So, I won't go into all the parameters that are similar to the Charlotte one, but one of the first parameters, outside the city of Charlotte, right now, most all of Mecklenburg County's money is going into the city of Charlotte because they're the only ones doing affordable housing. So the county has expressed that we would love to spend money outside of Charlotte, but we need communities outside of Charlotte to step up. And one of the things we've heard from the county is, while we support Cornelius doing this comprehensive housing plan, it will tell us what your priorities are for us giving you grants. They're aware of Smithville, very aware of Smithville, and the county's been very engaged with Smithville. So whatever priorities and how we work with Smithville, I think there's a very good opportunity that that neighborhood can achieve foundation funds, whether it's for property acquisition, whether it's for transitional housing. There's a lot of things in that Smithville plan that we could use those Mecklenburg dollars for. But if our comprehensive housing plan also shows that Meridian is a priority, we'll be able to get monies there as well. What the county has basically said is we need the town to step up and show a commitment in preparing the plan. And then when we look at your plan and see where your priorities are, whether they're Smithville, Meridian, Sefton, Washington Potts, down payment assistance, whatever your priorities are, we will let money flow into North Mecklenburg. The county wants to do that. So that's kind of how we look at this identification of resource recommendation here. A comprehensive and the recommendation says a comprehensive housing plan would need to establish priorities for housing development that could be turned into priorities for seeking funding. Foundation funding should be sought for larger neighborhood development planning and implementation, while a targeted strategy for CDBG and HUD funds could provide more widespread benefit for down payment assistance, rental subsidy, and our neighborhood infrastructure, such as sidewalks, street lighting, et cetera. So yes, the mayor is correct. We intend to tap into that foundation, but we're only going to be eligible for the Mecklenburg side of it. All the city of Charlotte money that's required by law to stay in the city of Charlotte. So that's kind of how that's the premise behind this recommendation. So Sean, since you bring that up, I'll ask the committee, any ideas or further thoughts on this particular recommendation that we have here?
Hey, Wayne, if I could just make one follow-up comment, and mine will be brief, just ditto to what the mayor said, ditto to what Wayne has said. And, you know, Wayne, I've been doing this many years. If we want to move the needle as a community, we have to be able to tap into these funds. And the funds are pretty much blocked off until we have a bona fide plan. So I'll stop there.
Wayne, can I follow-up question?
Yes.
So you basically, the Mecklenburg County is just basically being wide open. They're saying, hey, you guys put a plan together and then we'll evaluate your plan. And then we'll go from that point on what we will allocate to pay. I can't see them just saying, okay, you guys make a plan and we're just going to follow your plan without them saying we want you to focus on one thing from another. Or is it, or am I incorrect this saying you're going to go with whatever plan and there's going to judge from that point?
They're pretty much going to go with our plan. They're going to support us as a community doing our thing. Okay. They just want to make sure we have a plan. They're just not going to give us money willy-nilly without a plan.
Yeah, I didn't know if because when I'm looking at the breakdown, they're breaking it down, you know, from rentals, from homes for for sale, as they said, you know, natural occurring affordability.
Well, again, just to remember, you're looking at the city of Charlotte parameters. Mecklenburg's are different from the city of Charlotte's. As a matter of fact, Mecklenburg has fewer parameters than what the city of Charlotte has. The city of Charlotte has been doing this for a long time. So their parameters are much more definitive and specific, and it's meant to target certain neighborhoods such as Noda, Cherry neighborhood, West Side, those type things. Mecklenburg is much more wide open. Right now, most of Mecklenburg, like I said, all of Mecklenburg's dollars are going to the city of Charlotte because the city of Charlotte's the only one doing anything. So we're in a perfect position. If we put a plan together, we're probably the only, and we talk about Davidson. Davidson has their own way of doing affordable housing, but they are not tapping into the Mecklenburg dollars. They are not using those. So we will be the first at the doorstep, and the county is very excited to help us and to put money up here because it'll show money going elsewhere in the county other than just the city of Charlotte.
Okay,
and let me add too that the county's very excited about Smithville.
Mm-hmm.
They've seen that plan. Their first question, going back to a hard topic that we've talked about many times, is, well, what's the consensus of the neighborhood? So anyway, that's probably, we're trying to determine that right now. But once we get that determined, we'll have some great opportunities with funding through that plan, the county plan. With Smithville, I think so. We want that included, but we also want the ability to spread that out into the other neighborhoods that we've talked about as well.
Right.
So that's kind of where I think Wayne's coming from.
So any other suggestions or comments on this resource and opportunity recommendation? Well, let me jump back up and I'll continue down. And if you want to jump back to any one that I've touched on, feel free. But I talked a lot about the first one, the comprehensive housing plan, and that we want that to be all inclusive, but we are going to add some language about the role model that Smithville is and their planning effort. And we'll certainly add some language to recognize that and to be cognizant of that. Let me move to the second recommendation, land use and zoning. Currently, and you've heard Keith Eicher, who's the chairman of our planning board, and Susan, who's already also on the planning board. Currently, there are no specific goals or strategies that the planning board can use in land use planning related to housing. So one thing that is recommended here is that the comprehensive housing plan should make specific recommendations about policies and goals that would be not only in the housing plan, but would be specifically included in the land use plan update that the planning board is working on right now. The housing plan should evaluate the need for various types of mixed use and land use patterns that could be included in neighborhood housing projects, as well as potential inclusion in the zoning code. Evaluate all Cornelius neighborhoods for potential redevelopment plans, such as Smithville, Meridian, Sefton, Washington Potts, Bailey, and prioritize those neighborhoods for the attention that they need. And that prioritization could be something as simple as, hey, Smithville's already 50% down the road. Let's make sure we continue that support and do what's necessary to make that plan successful. Meridian needs help. Let's start a process there. Let's do that. But these land use goals could include things like being cognizant of the need for density and multifamily to make affordable housing possible. Trying to do large lot single family is not a promotion of affordable housing or workforce housing. So let me stop there and see if there's any comments on that one.
Wayne?
Yes, sir.
Keith, I'd just like to echo what you're saying. I think that we're in the initial stages of looking at that land use plan, and any help would be greatly appreciated, because we consistently have plans, developments coming before us with no effort at all to make any allowance for affordable housing. And, you know, we're looking at lots of the things coming forward now are in the 600,000 plus category, and single family units, it just doesn't help this problem at all. So any input, any recommendations, we greatly appreciated in helping us make intelligent decisions and informed decisions about the plan.
Yeah, you'll be hearing a lot more about this. This is on our agenda, our work agenda, if you will, for the year to certainly at least tweak this land use plan that was, I think, put in place back in 2014. Wayne, is that right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It's time to be tweaked again, because as Keith just noted, I mean, we've got development requests coming from everywhere. I mean, they're out there, and there is some great stuff, but without this overlay or this direction, it's hard to implement. You know, many of you've heard about the Sefton development. Wayne's referred to it just a little bit. That's going through the process right now. And you know, we're sort of pounding the table and saying, hey, you know, this is a great opportunity for affordable housing next to transit, next to, you know, the bus rapid transits, park and ride, on and on. So, but without this being tweaked, there's no direction, you know, for them to go there. So, so anyway, it's a big deal, and you will be seeing more and hearing more about that as we move into our retreats that are coming up, and our conversations, at least at the board level, to give direction to planning and planning board and so forth to move that forward. Very critical item.
Yeah.
Mayor and Wayne, this is Roger. I'd like to just toss in a comment there about the relationship between a comprehensive plan and then a topic-specific plan like housing. The comprehensive plan is the umbrella, and it's the vehicle to connect the dots. So there are specific studies dealing with either housing, transportation, employment, and so on. And there are linkages between all those different issues. And the comprehensive plan is the umbrella that can look at the whole picture and connect the dots. So I think that what is being suggested here is terrific, to be doing this housing plan and have it coordinate with the work on the whole community comprehensive plan. That makes so much sense.
And I certainly also hope, and I want to make sure Matt and Joe aren't sitting out there thinking, what's wrong with Wayne? But we've tried to put these recommendations such that, yes, we're talking about land use, but we also have recommendations talking about incentives and dollars. Because the one thing about housing development, it's a numbers game. It only works when the numbers work. So if you want affordable housing, sometimes there's got to be an incentive, there's got to be a dollar investment, there's got to be something from the local government or the community that helps the developer make the dollars work to provide the affordability. And I hope I'm not saying that wrong. Joe or Matt, you can correct me if I'm out of line.
You're in line. You're in line, Wayne.
Wayne, this is Ryan. If I could just chime in on this, I truly think if we're going to talk about, transformative affordability, I think this is one of the biggest things that can come out of this committee. I've read over this document, the 2018 housing report, a number of times, and then just seeing, on page 33, this giant green blob that is North Mecklenburg of all this single family housing. And working on that idea of, yes, it needs to be the numbers game. But I watched Charlotte City Council last night and was just mind boggled by the amount of money that the city of Charlotte is using, essentially acting as developer.
Yes.
And that's certainly a key perspective to understand. But working on zoning to say, yes, we want to have this mix here to allow this soft density. The fact that, 0.3% of the land use in Cornelius is for duplex and triplex. I think that's a really golden opportunity that the town can make without having to expend a ton of time, money, and resources. That can really be a critical factor there. So thrilled to see this and really excited to see where this moves next.
And I appreciate that, Ryan. That is one of the things that we've heard from several of you, and I appreciate to know that you read some of the materials we handed out. But the question was, if we did amend some of our zoning and allowed for more duplex and triplex, could there be more naturally occurring affordable housing? I still think it's difficult. I think even if we can create those duplexes and things like that, probably with land values, they're probably going to still be higher rents, but it gives us the opportunity. It's the opportunity to provide different types of housing that can be for workforce and make it affordable. So we want to provide the opportunity.
Wayne, this is Sean. I have just a question, and this is I'm asking because this is before me being here in Cornelius. I know we don't have a plan, but has there ever been a focus for Cornelius for affordable housing, for workforce ever, of the mindset of setting up a community, kind of like a Pool Place? It was a community, it was all done up. Or was it more of an idea kind of spreading individuals throughout the town and not put them all together in one place? Or has it been a mixture of both?
I'm just going to respond. What little I know is that I don't think there has been a concerted affordable housing effort from the town, but I might let Andrew or the mayor address Pool Place because I think Andrew was here when Pool Place came about, but it was a concerted effort to partner with Habitat to provide that type of housing. But Andrew, if you have anything to add on to that.
Yeah, so Sean, probably the way I'd address that is absent a plan, because we don't have a plan. We did not have a plan when Pool Place came around. It was a one-off, and it was an opportunity that we jumped on, if you will. It was right timing, right place. The market was totally different with land values and the real estate market, if you will. There were one-off funds available that we were able to tap into in order to do that. We were able to get some all these pots of money that Wayne has talked about, and Roger's talked about, CDBG, home funds, literally, close to $1 million at that point. That was a true one-off. That will not happen today, unfortunately. And to be very frank about it, it was something that the town did almost prematurely without a true redevelopment plan. Much like I think Susan made the point, Ron has made the point about what kind of community do we really want if we're going to do a true 100% affordable community. That is a community that has 100% the same type of housing type. What Smithville has rolled out in their plan is a mix. We didn't really go through the conscious effort to publicly decide what do we want out of that neighborhood. if we were to do it today all over again, I suspect we probably have something that reflects more like what Smithville has put together than this plan. So all this to say, I know I'm perhaps preaching to the choir and I'm just repeating what Wayne and Roger have said, but we really do need a conscious public effort to put together a plan. So when these opportunities do arise, we can jump on them and we know what we want out of it.
Yeah, let me add one thing to that as well, because it's really good points, and Andrew's right on. But you know, if we know what we know now in terms of doing a plan, would we desperately needed what Habitat helped us provide down at Pool Place for sure, but would we put it there? I beg to say probably not, because that's one of our main, most significant commercial corridors in town. And we don't have many of those for economic development purposes and jobs and all those kind of things. So the lack of a plan probably caused us to react to it because it was a good thing and we needed it. But, you know, could it be better served for our community if we had a plan and put it somewhere else? That doesn't mean we don't have it, but maybe that's not the very best place as things have evolved. Did I say that? Did that make sense, Wayne?
Yes, sir. And the mayor's exactly right. You know, the desire for the industrial land, which we want to provide jobs for people who live here and who want to come here. And that's probably the only real advantage to having them out on Bailey Road, is that they could walk to work in a lot of those industry that are out there. But what it does is it takes away our available land for economic development. But a plan, we could have done it much better, in a better location, in a better way. Let me jump to the next one, historic preservation. This came up from several of you that are aware that there are tax credits for historic preservation. And we wanted to list that in here because it's a valuable tool. It can help, but we want to make sure we understand the pros and cons because, and I'll use Smithville as an example, it can also be a barrier. So you want to apply it at the right time. You want to make sure that you're able to do the redevelopment you need without having historic commissions blocking you. Because unfortunately, that's one thing that can happen, is that in the pursuit of preservation, they block redevelopment. So we want to make sure that a neighborhood like Smithville or any other neighborhood can pursue and achieve the goals they need to for aging in place and supplying the right housing, but then capitalizing on the historic tax credits at the right time. So I think there's a sequence of events that you can utilize and capitalize, and we certainly want to evaluate that. So I think that's an excellent recommendation. Any questions on that one?
Wayne, this is Joe. I would absolutely agree with what you're saying on the historic part. This is probably the one that gave me the most angst when I just saw it on the list. It would make housing very expensive, or could make housing very expensive. And just on Smithville alone, I wasn't quite following everything on the land use plan, but I remember a green in the a park area on the sketch plan that I thought was going to be very beneficial to that community and all of the mix of housing. I wonder if you could make something historic out of, you know, to where you preserve that land and you know, and kind of get the historic groups that might try to get some traction, you know, to give them something that they, you know, that anchors that part of the land use for Smithfield. Anyway, that's all I had.
And I appreciate that, Joe, and you're right on. There are a world of possibilities for designation, whether it be open space, park area. You know, the easy thing that I try to remember about historic designation, and what I really like about Julie and what our local historic group has done is for partnering with Mecklenburg, is that our goal is not necessarily to block people to preserve history, but it's really to preserve what means something to us. And that could be a park, that could be an open space. So we're looking at preserving the meaning and what people remember versus necessarily getting into the details of the structure and those type things. So I think this is something we can work with. And luckily, I think all the groups work with us. So I think we're on good footing here.
Yeah, Wayne, correct. And I'd be happy to, you know, share that with the group. And my question is, would that be historic designation for individual properties or like a historic area?
It could be either or both. Okay. And I think, again, evaluating what works best in each situation.
Okay. Hey, Wayne and Sean, for me, I think this is essential for our town. With the way our property is going, it's getting more and more limited. Just the character, the history of these areas like Smithville is essential of our identity. So I think this is incredibly important of a piece to be in this plan. This is my opinion.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay. Well, yes.
I think you got it nailed there, Wayne.
Well, let me jump down to the evaluation of short-term rental options for the Arts District. And we had several of you mention this, that we are still in the preliminary stages of developing the Arts District, and we're working with different stakeholders. But one of the comments that came out is to study short-term rentals and how they might help the Arts District and could also be an affordable option, not only for visiting artists, but for folks around the Cain Center and the district itself. I think that's an excellent recommendation. I'll admit, I don't know. I know that the state law gives us the opportunity to regulate short-term housing, but I'm not an expert on short-term housing. I don't know what the pros and cons are and whether they benefit us or if it's negative. But the suggestion is, let's evaluate that. Let's look at what there might be out there from a positive that could help the town as a whole, as well as the Arts District. So I'll stop there and see if there's any comments on that.
Is it assumed that the housing or these short-term rentals would not necessarily be housing and could be studios?
I think that's an option. I think that's something that was definitely being thought about when that comment was made.
Are you talking about, when you say short-term rentals, are you talking about like
6 months
at a time? What's your definition in this scenario of short-term rentals?
Well, right now in the town of Cornelius, the legal definition is, yeah, and Aaron remind me, I should know this, but I think it's more than 90 days or less than 3 weeks is not short term. So if you're in between 3 weeks and 90 days, you're considered short term. And that's basically, like Airbnb, VRBO, any type of thing where you're moving in for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or a month, that's considered short term.
I know that's not something that we have done.
No.
So that's I guess that was my question on that, would be, if you did open it for the Arts District, then would that not then create a scenario to where we have to open up to all areas of Cornelius?
It very well could, and that's one of the things we would have to study. Now, we've talked to the town board about this, and I'll go ahead and throw it out. Probably in the next legislative session, our legislature is going to make short-term rentals wide open for everybody. So it might be a moot point. But certainly it's something we can continue to follow and see if we want to do it for Arts District and what the implications are for the rest of town. But I do think the General Assembly is going to take away our ability to regulate, and it's going to be wide open come another year.
Didn't we have a lot of lakefront properties that would love to do short-term rentals?
Sure, yes.
We do, and that's been very problematic, though. We've had some less than really good experience, with those, particularly in very well-established neighborhoods, and, you know, people roll in for the weekend and tear them up. And,
well, that's exactly the reason why I was asking that, is because I think that, and I knew that, Wayne, that they were considering taking that off for towns' ability to make those choices in individual towns. However, you know, it may be, you know, until that point in time comes, you know, that might be something to consider, because then you'd have to essentially, I would think, open it up across the board, and there might be a lot of backlash with that.
That's right.
And then, you know, as far as from an affordability perspective, when you look at short-term rentals, if you're looking at Airbnbs and whatnot, it doesn't really, I don't think I don't think one goes hand in hand with the other, because if you're looking at Airbnbs, people are coming in for a specific reason. And a lot of people come in looking for Airbnbs for the week or for whatnot, for vacation.
Right.
Essentially, you know, as it pertains to the lake. And yes, you know, with the arts district, as we're creating that, you could certainly have that as a component to it. Then, you know, what does that actually look like in other areas?
That's right. It definitely needs to be evaluated. Sean?
Yeah, yes, sir. So I've have quite a few investors that deal with Airbnbs throughout the lake. So when I first saw this in here, I actually took a step back. I'm like, whoa, okay. It would be really hard to police this. And
it is.
Because
it is pretty difficult.
Yeah, because this will all be booked out online. And here, Cornelius is with the lake. It's a really big destination. Cornelius would, I mean, if you go on Airbnb, it lights up like a Christmas tree. Yeah, there are people doing it.
Yep.
I do like having the regulation in there to help offset the individuals that are a little bit, you know, unruly. But if you open this door, you're not going to be able to keep it just in downtown. But with the Art Center, with OMB, it's downtown Cornelius is going to be just as big of a destination as the lake. So I could see the positive. I could see, again, the ability for individuals that are here short term before they buy a home. But I just, when I took a step back, I just don't see how this fits what we're trying to do.
Well, based on that, let me ask, would it be a consensus to remove this recommendation or just change the language from the Arts District to the town as a whole? What's the preference, that maybe this doesn't apply, or we should just look at the whole town?
I think
remove.
Well,
okay.
If I could add, it's not necessarily just Airbnbs, like, but if somebody had a larger house and they wanted to use it as a bed and breakfast, or, you know, because there's nothing within walking distance right now of the Kane Center for people to stay. They'd have to use some sort of transportation to get there.
Good. That's a good point.
Good point.
Well, I would say let's keep it in there, but maybe change the language a little bit. That's not so focused on visiting artists. Or
okay.
I think it'd be good to have that conversation, because I think she made an excellent point, that we don't have a place for people to stay overnight in downtown Cornelius.
I think what I'll do is I'll follow up offline with the rest of the committee members and just see if I can get what the majority is on that one. And we'll decide if we're going to leave that in or change the language.
Yeah, it appears the state's going to take care of it for us. So I believe that's a pretty good chance. Sooner than later, that the Airbnb lobby effort in Raleigh's, I mean, it's grown unbelievably. So it's pretty strong.
What I think I'm going to do with our time, we're at 11:10. I want to make sure I at least cover the remaining ones very quickly and then open it up for comment there. The community and neighborhood consensus. This is going to be a very important part of developing a housing plan. And it's very important to each strategy for each neighborhood. It's important for Smithville because we have people on both sides of the issue who there are some people who think gentrification is just, it's an okay way to do things. And we need to respect that there's that opinion. But we also have people who think we need to have mixed use plans, and we need to look to the betterment and preservation of the history. So we need to be respectful of that as well. And we're going to have differing opinions in every neighborhood. So we do need to respect and look for consensus. But what we've also been told is there comes a point the town needs to step up and be the leader, because you may never get consensus. And the town just needs to do the right thing. And we acknowledge that. We know that. Development incentives, we currently have no specific incentive programs. I think the studies have shown out, especially with the city of Charlotte, that density bonuses don't do it alone, and they're not the solution. But you might use them in combination with financial participation. And so the recommendation here is the town should either budget or seek funding through available resources to provide financial funding that will help for financial equity in these neighborhood projects. And then the next item is town financial participation in these opportunities. The town should evaluate real opportunities for town budget and funding utilizing tax dollars that show commitment to housing opportunities. And the specific recommendation was consider housing bonds, similar to what the city of Charlotte does. One of the problems here, and I think the manager will tell you this, is right now with transportation, we've probably maxed out our bond opportunities and our debt. But maybe sometime in the future, there's an opportunity for housing bonds. So it's a good priority to have. Land acquisition. We've talked about the fact that we have 11 properties in Smithville. What you'll hear from developers is that free land goes a long way to support affordable housing. It lowers the cost. So the recommendation that I've heard from several of you is that we need to continue to consider acquiring land, look at it in strategic ways, and to make sure that we have a specific plan to provide that to promote affordable housing in these areas. The next one says to continue to develop and maintain partnerships. We talked about our partnership with Habitat, with Ada Jenkins, with the county, with the city of Charlotte, with Central Lina. It's imperative that we maintain those partnerships, but we look for new ones, such as Foundation for the Carolinas, Housing Partnership, because that's where the big bucks are. So we need to prepare our plan and go after the big bucks. And since nobody else is doing it, we're in a good position to reap the benefits of those big dollars. We already talked about resource opportunities, but talk about budget matching funds. I wasn't so much on budgeting because in a small town, you might only, one CDBG for Cornelius, they only allow us to do one grant at a time. You can't do multiple grants. So if we open one, it might be open for 2 or 3 years. So from a staff standpoint, I wanted to include the language that the town should prioritize the use of fund balance to support grant matches as they become available. I think it's not necessarily in our best interest to budget $30,000 every year as a match if we're only going to be able to get a grant every 2 or 3 years. So this is something that we don't know how often grants come available, but when they do, if we can prioritize and say, well, this is a good use of fund balance, or hopefully maybe if we know 6 or 8 months in advance, we could actually budget for the match. But just prioritize obtaining these grants and making the match as necessary. And then on the employee housing programs, we note that Cornelius just this year started the first of a 4-year phase program of providing stipends to police who choose to live in the town. The recommendation here and what I heard from folks is, hey, that's a pretty good idea. Continue that phase program for the police, but then look to expand it to fire and other employees. Let's promote all of our employees living in town. And then let's also talk to the chamber about talking to businesses about the benefits of providing to their employees and getting the benefits of having their employees live close and being part of the town that they work in. And then lastly, regional solutions. While all other towns appear to be doing their own thing right now, we should always continue efforts to look for ways to collaborate. Our mayor has an excellent relationship with Mayor Annarella and Mayor Knox and Davidson. And we've had a lot of good cooperative efforts come out of those positive relationships. And I think there's no reason we shouldn't continue to have those discussions and seek cooperation where we can, because anywhere we can cooperate, it's good for Cornelius, it's good for the region, and it can help us financially with economies of scale. So that's everything that we have in the recommendation document. Let me stop there. I want to make sure I'm respectful of your time. We said 11:30 is our limit today. Is there anything else that in these final issues that's of concern, or any comment or recommendation we would need to throw in there?
Wayne and Sean. I real quick, and please, I apologize if I just didn't hear it, but there was a recommendation of us looking at a possible separate company or separate entity.
Yes.
I didn't see it in here. Would that be something that we want to also put in here? You know, Roger, I might lean on you a little bit. I think that's something that needs to be addressed in the comprehensive housing plan. I don't know that in this brief recommendation here that we just step out there and say we need a CDC, because we really don't exactly know, except for Smithville, we don't really know what our other priorities and opportunities are. The advantage to a CDC or to something like a CDC is the ability to manage money and acquire funding and develop partnerships in a much easier fashion than what local government can do it. So somewhere along the line, I think, yes, we want to support third-party organizations, but I think we probably need to look at those on a case-by-case basis with each neighborhood. I'm not sure we're ready for a town-wide CDC, but Roger, any comments from you on that?
Yes, depending on the circumstances and opportunities, that can be a really, really effective tool. But for Cornelius, not right now, not yet, but I think that it's a, as we're talking about potential future options, partnerships, or what might we do in the future, I think it's absolutely should be on the table as something to consider, to find out, to explore what communities have done, whether it's CDC or housing trust fund or something, and to be having on the table for consideration when the time is right. So I do like the idea of having it mentioned as something as a future consideration, so that we don't lose or drop the idea, and,
right.
And it's clear that it's being thought about. It's just not right now.
Thank you.
Hey, Wayne, Joe here. Just a couple of quick ones. I had it up. Under continue to develop and maintain partnerships, under the recommendation, it says organizations such as Foundations of the Carolinas. As I understand it, years ago, before the government started budgeting and helping those in need, the churches used to be very instrumental in helping those with special needs. So I know our church, Bethel Presbyterian, right now is discussing ways that they could help with housing and making things more affordable. So I'd suggest we add to Foundations of the Carolinas, emphasize other organizations such as churches,
faith community.
I believe there's more than just Bethel that are talking about this very thing right now.
I totally agree. Totally agree. Good suggestion.
Okay. And then the second one is, I guess, to a point Sean, I think, was trying to make earlier about the historic side. We used to have a condition or a requirement that we had to have good architecture and good materials for our communities. And then we took that away. And I'm glad that it went away, but I've also seen some really crappy work since, and certainly there was a lot before that. I don't know if with the affordability, if we could also add a requirement for good design, good materials, or restrict certain types of materials. If it's left to its own, Smithfield could be redeveloped and not be so cute and not be so well done, or it could be done very well. And it could happen affordably. So I don't know how to make this suggestion, but if there's a requirement or a restriction that we could add to this that we'd like to see for the materials, design, et cetera, bonus points, I don't know. I'll shut up.
We'll see if there's a generic way we can address that. The reason that a lot of our rules went away is the state took away our ability to regulate single family and duplexes. So we actually can't say anything about those. But where we still have some ability to negotiate is that most all of these redevelopment plans are going to have to go through conditional zoning. So there's the ability for the town to ask, the applicant has to agree, and hopefully we would all agree on high quality appearance. One of the things that you heard in a couple of our presentations, you know, what you'll hear from developers in the city of Charlotte is the one thing that that negates the provision of the affordable housing is having to meet all the appearance standards. But at the same time, we do want to make sure that we don't get something that's undesirable. So I think through conditional zoning, we still have the ability to have discussions, to have cooperation, and to talk through it. And I think we'll want to continue that. And I think we can put language in that reflects that.
Wayne, one of the things I think Roger mentioned before that he had worked with the town of Chapel Hill. We did a project in Chapel Hill that had a required affordable housing component. But what the town did is they actually were not the land purchaser, but they were the affordable duplex purchaser, because they saw the benefit of us as the builder getting 2 houses on 1 lot, reduce the land cost per unit, but also they took advantage of them being the purchaser, reduce the soft costs considerably on that house. There's no sitting on the market, you know, eating up finance charges. The town, you know, just netted out all the soft costs to say, what's the bottom line price? And then they purchased it from us at the time of completion. And it probably saved 8 to 10% in overall soft costs because they had the buyer in the wings. It also helped them maintain the deed restriction and govern that in a resale scenario, it wasn't put back on the market at market rate, but indeed stayed in the affordable housing program. So I'm not saying Chapel Hill has it all right, but that one worked out where we took a 13 lot infill subdivision, made it 14, reduced the basis of our land on a duplex. Chapel Hill became our purchaser, and they turned around in Chapel Hill, 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath, 2-car garage duplex, turned around and sold it to an individual for $175,000, which ridiculously affordable for Chapel Hill. So Roger, I think you had some more experience with Chapel Hill, but that was our recent experience where it made it, the cost benefit analysis really worked out as us as developers.
It was a good example, and I think it was successful. So I think that one of the things that we can be doing with this plan is to be identifying examples like that other communities have done, what mechanisms they've put in place to make it happen, and see if any of those would be a good fit for Cornelia. So good suggestion, good example.
I like the deed restriction part of it because that is a guarantee to keep it affordable.
Yes.
Well, that's been the struggle, right? Is that somebody
Yes.
buys it because the builder puts it into the marketplace as affordable. 2-3 years pass, the market jumps. The homeowner gets the wealth advantage and the net wealth gain, but then the next person is no longer in the affordable inventory for the community.
I'm actually very happy you guys are bringing this up. That was one of my concerns I wanted to bring up, is that we have had examples here in Cornelius of Habitat homes in downtown Cornelius that were built for Habitat owners. They met the requirements. They were able to sell the home and cash out of the home. And now it's in regular market and it's not lined up for another individual to come in for an affordable home. So now we just lost, yes, the homeowner has a little bit of a cash windfall, but the big thing is now we lost another unit that could be utilized for another family for affordable housing. And that was my concern is that if we do more building, I just don't want to be help a family that really needs it, then we lose that unit after they cash out or if once it's sold.
And there are a couple of mechanisms to address that issue, and you're right that can happen. One is that I've seen, and again we use the Chapel Hill, having some organization, whether it be a CDC or land trust or something else, written into the original purchase, has a right of first refusal to buy the property with at prescribed increases, annual increases in the cost of it. And then that organization can either trigger the right to buy it or not. But yeah, some mechanism like that can help address the issue of keeping units affordable over time.
Well, Mayor, I'm going to jump in here. I hate it when we're having such good conversation, but I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I think what I would suggest at this point, Mayor, is I will take the comments thus far, and I would encourage any of the committee members to send me any emails, and we will revise the recommendations based on the comments made, and we will get those back out to the committee. And what I would suggest is let's go ahead and plan to have our last meeting on January 28th at 10 a.m. And it might be a short meeting where we just look at the final edits and look at the final recommendations and make sure we're all good. And we'll plan to shoot for the 28th at 10 a.m. So with that, Mayor, I'll turn it back over to you for any closing remarks and adjournment.
Okay, great. Thank you, Wayne. We may have to adjust that date a little bit, but
okay, that'll be fine.
We can talk about that.
Okay.
But yes, I do think a wrap-up meeting would be in order just to close this out. Great discussion, great input. I think we're really on a roll here. So, you know, I do want to have one final discussion to put some things to bed that we've thrown out there and make sure that we've got it right based on the recommendations that have come out of this group. We'll be making some recommendations back to town board as soon as possible. This leads right into our budget discussions that are coming up, and you know, anything that's good does involve money. So you know, we have that on our mind and want to put that in place as we move this forward and bring this part of it, this phase of it, to a conclusion and go from there. So thank you all for your input. More to come. Back in touch with you. I appreciate all your great conversations today. And again, I'll emphasize, you know, keep those emails coming. Please take a minute to give us your thoughts if you have additional ones that weren't expressed today. We want to be inclusive of everything anybody's got on their mind. So so keep that effort going, and we'll be scheduling this next meeting and certainly look forward to it. And thank you for your time today. Have a good day and rest of the week, and we will talk soon. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Wayne.
Thanks.